You know, it's kind of wild to think that one of the oldest tricks in the digital playbook is still one of the most dangerous. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a persistent, powerful, and pretty scary threat: injection attacks.
So, what in the world is an injection attack? Well, think about a medical injection for a second. A needle delivering something directly into your system, right? In the digital world, it's almost the same idea. An attacker injects malicious code into a web application, basically forcing it to do things it was never ever designed to do.
I know. It sounds almost too simple to be true, doesn't it? How can something so basic be so devastatingly effective? Well, the reason is surprisingly and maybe a little frighteningly straightforward. At the heart of every single injection attack is one fundamental failure: blind trust. An application gets data from a user, in a search box, a login form, pretty much anywhere. And instead of being skeptical and checking it out, it just trusts it. That blind trust, that is the wide open door for an attacker.
And this whole process follows a pretty universal pattern. First, the attacker finds any place the app takes input. Second, instead of typing in their name or search term, they pop in a malicious command. And third, this is the key part: the system doesn't see that as data. It sees it as an instruction, and it runs it.
Now, injection attacks aren't just one thing. They're more like a whole family of vulnerabilities, and we can basically group them into three main types based on what the attacker wants to achieve. The first one, and probably the most famous, is all about stealing data.
This category covers attacks that go after specific places where data is stored. You've got SQL injection, which goes right for the main database. Then there's LDAP injection, which targets user directories, kind of like a company's digital phone book. And XPath injection is used to pull info from structured XML files. See the pattern? The tech might be different, but the goal is always the same: get the goods.
Let's really zoom in on the all-time classic SQL injection. SQL is the language that pretty much every database speaks. So an attacker just writes a malicious SQL command and injects it into a form. The application, not knowing any better, just passes that command straight to the database, which then happily executes it and potentially spills all of its secrets.
And the consequences? Oh, they are absolutely catastrophic. A successful SQL injection can give an attacker a free pass to all your sensitive data, let them change or even delete that data, and sometimes it can lead to them completely taking over the entire server. Even a failed attempt can be bad, leaking valuable info through error messages.
All right, our second category of injection attacks takes things a huge step further. This isn't just about stealing data from the application anymore. It's about hijacking the entire server that the application is running on. Now we're talking about two really potent attack vectors: code injection, which tricks an app into running the attacker's own code, and command injection, which lets them run commands directly on the server's operating system itself.
With command injection, the attacker basically bypasses the application completely. They're not talking to the app anymore. It's like they're typing commands directly into the server's terminal, giving them a direct line to the very heart of the system.
The risks here are, well, they're about as high as they get. An attacker can run any command they want, get to or destroy any file on the server, and ultimately gain total control of the operating system. From there, they can often escalate their privileges to become a full-blown administrator. Game over.
And that brings us to our third and final category, which completely shifts the target. Instead of going after the server or the database, these attacks turn the website itself into a weapon to attack the very people who visit it. This is where attacks like cross-site scripting, or XSS as you'll usually see it, come into play. Here, the attacker injects a malicious script, but not for the server to run. Nope, it's for the web browser of some unsuspecting visitor. So you think you're on a trusted site, but that site is now secretly feeding you malicious code.
So let's break down how cross-site scripting works, because it's pretty clever. An attacker finds a weak spot, maybe in a comment section or a user profile page, and they post a malicious script. Then later, when you come along and visit that page, the trusted website delivers that script right to your browser, which runs it because, hey, it came from a source it trusts.
And this lets an attacker do all sorts of nasty stuff inside your browser. They can steal your session cookies to hijack your account, they can deface the website, use the site to spread malware, or even launch super convincing phishing attacks that look like they're coming from the real deal.
So, after seeing all these different types, you're probably wondering just how common this whole problem really is. I'll give you a hint.
That's right, number one. For years, and I mean years, despite being one of the oldest attacks in the book, injection flaws have consistently been ranked as the top vulnerability for web applications. It's a massive, persistent, and foundational problem for the internet.
A quote from our source material really just nails the stakes here. It says that because these attacks can be used to steal confidential and private information, or even hijack the entire server, they are a fundamental threat to the entire web application industry.
So here's the big takeaway. All of these different dangerous attacks, whether it's stealing data, compromising a server, or tricking a user, they all stem from that one single simple flaw: blindly trusting what a user types into a box.
You know, the web is built on this really complex chain of trust. But what injection attacks show us is just how fragile that trust can be at its very core. If we can't even trust the simplest form of user input, how can we possibly secure everything else? That's a question that everyone who builds or even just uses the web really needs to think about.